Can laptops finally deliver an all-day battery life? And what will eSims mean for Aussie smartphone owners? Vertical Hold is proudly sponsored by Casa Systems, taking Australian technology to the global market. Welcome to Vertical Hold, behind the tech news, where we talk to Australia's leading technology journalists to get the stories behind the news of the week. I'm Adam Turner, and this week I'm not joined as always by Alex Kidman. He and his constant travel companion Mini Godzilla have jumped in the Vertical Hold Learjet and made the pilgrimage back to Japan for a HP laptop launch. We'll hear from Alex soon, assuming he's not out on an all-night bender with Mini Godzilla and Akihabara. We're also joined this week by a longtime friend of the show, Byteside editor Seamus Byrne. Konnichiwa, Seamus. Is your Japanese as rusty as mine?
Oh, it's even less than that. I while I am visiting there, I always remember how to say my pleases and thank yous, but I forget the second I get off the plane.
They will get you a long way. My family's all knows a bit of Japanese, and we're going to Japan in a couple of weeks, and I'm the one who knows two words. And we were speaking on the show a couple of weeks ago, and I didn't realize till later my family said to me that Alex said, "So how are you, my friend?" And I replied with, "I'm delicious." So that's how good my Japanese is. So you're here to talk about eSims. Telstra's getting in on eSims. I think Vodafone and Optus might already support them. What the hell is an eSim, and why should we care?
Yep. All right. So I think a lot of people's first experience, if they've had one so far, might have been through support for smartwatches. So that was early on when we started first getting the actual kind of cellular networks built into smartwatches. I think Galaxy Watch was from Samsung was probably the first one, and then Apple Watch started supporting the cellular networks a couple of generations in. So that was that idea where you could get it added to your account as a second device. And so you'd have your normal phone and that would support your number. And then when you decide I'm going to go for a run and I'm going to leave my phone at home and I'm just going to have my cellular watch on, and you're paying like $5 a month or something, whatever the companies might charge to get away with it. You'd basically be able to run off and still have that connected. And so that was an eSIM, which is built in. And it is essentially this totally embedded SIM. I think the E is literally for embedded. And it means that to change SIMs, you're basically changing a code that is attached to that SIM instead of needing to actually kind of swap out a physical SIM, which is kind of like the old like CDMA network days almost, when there was no SIM. It was just that your phone was coded to the network and to support your particular account. So it's very similar to that sort of a system. And the way it works now is that if you go in and try to buy an eSIM setup with your account information, you will either be given a code to type in, or the quite a common one is that you'll get a QR code, and then your phone will know how to sort of set up the details by just snapping that QR code in the settings.
And so the news this week is that Telstra is supporting eSIMs with the new iPhone. So I can see why you'd want a SIM in a watch, like an eSIM in a watch, because that lets you sync things up with your phone and maybe use some of the cellular features on your watch when you're not within range of your phone. But why would I want an eSIM in my phone, and how does that work?
So the main reason that you would want an eSIM is the same reason that some people have really loved the idea of having a dual SIM phone. And so that's that idea that, like some phones have supported it, but it's kind of pretty clunky. That idea that you actually have a SIM slot that can support two separate SIMs running in the same phone at the same time. And so awesome. It's not the drug dealer phone setup, but rather the that travel thing of being able to go overseas and say, I'm going to grab a local SIM so that I can use local data plan while I'm here, but I still want to be able to receive phone calls on my normal number. So that's where I think a lot of people sort of got really excited about dual SIMs for a long time. But like I said, not many phones ever really supported it, or you'd have to buy some kind of fancy international version of a phone. I remember like some of the Galaxy phones have supported dual SIM, but you'd have to like order it from Singapore or somewhere if you wanted to get that special edition version. And it even had weird things attached to it where, that might be that you'd have to actually take out your micro SD card in order to put in the second SIM, which could clearly ruin half the point of being able to stick an extra SD card in.
Yeah.
So now, eSIM is that idea of being able to say, actually, I'm going to have my main number encoded into the phone, and then while I'm traveling, I've got an empty SIM slot, and I can just go where I'm going and buy that extra SIM card and slap it in. Now, I actually first, so what it's now been about 1 or 2 years that phones have started to support eSIMs.
Yeah.
And I kind of first I got confused and I actually thought like, oh, cool. Like when I'm overseas, I'll have my nano SIM that is mine in the thing. And then when I go somewhere, I'll be able to temporarily add an eSIM
Like
to my.
reprogram the eSIM for whichever country you're in.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I mean it seemed sensible, and then I actually spent about half a day once in London trying to find the one network that supported eSIMs in England at the moment. Well, at the time was called like I think they're literally EE is the name of the network over there. But hunted down a store, went and found it, and the whole thing, and like it was all over the tube, all over London, trying to get to this place. Um, and I got there, and I'm like, okay, can I get the eSIM thing? And they're like, okay, yep, they start trying to get all these account details things. I'm like, oh no, I just like want like a 30-day plan. And they're like, oh no, eSIM
No,
is
dude,
is
no.
for the main account. We can
Yeah.
give you a nano SIM if you want just a 30-day deal. And I was like, and I mean, as soon as they said it, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So with Australia, I mean, global roaming was so expensive and such a rort for so long. And then the pressure sort of built up as one telco after another introduced a better deal. And even Telstra, who was so good at screwing people on global roaming, came up with better deals. I mean, they're still more expensive than the others. But it's got to a point to where global roaming is not as painful as it used to be. And I always found the first couple of times I traveled overseas for work, I did the thing where I would swap in another SIM. I did it in New York and it was an absolute nightmare trying to get this thing to work. I did it in Tokyo once and it wasn't too bad because you can pick up SIMs at the airport, but there's a hassle, especially if you've got an iPhone. It takes like 24 hours for iMessages to catch up that you've changed SIMs and all this stuff. So now that roaming's like $5 a day, I think a lot of people would think, oh, I'm not going to bother. I'm just going to stick with my phone. I'll just give in and pay the tax, and then I know my phone will still work as normal. Do you think that enough Australians have gone down that path that they now don't care so much about an eSIM, or will it open their ideas to new ways of doing things, mind to new ways of doing things?
Yeah, I think you're totally right that I think part of their comfort now, and like you said at the start, that Vodafone and Optus have been supporting it. I don't know if it was for the entire last 12 months, but definitely, at least inside that last 12 months, they've already started supporting this properly. And Telstra is launching it in line with the new iPhone launch this weekend. Um, but yeah, I think you're right that a lot of them know that now people are kind of comfortable with the idea that if you're only going to be, particularly business travelers, if you're only going to be overseas for, let's say it's 3 or 4 days, that,
Yeah,
whether it's Voda with the $5 a day, which is like definitely such an awesome deal. You're like, yep, that is convenience money. I'll absolutely wear $20 for a few days. Telstra at $10 a day is in that territory where you sort of go, again, I'll wear it. Like Telstra's the master, right? Of they'll charge what they know we'll put up with. They
and a
don't.
little bit more,
Yeah,
just
it's
enough
like
to sting.
just
Yeah,
just that little bit extra. Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
Um, and but if you are, let's say you were going to go to Japan for a whole week, or I'm overseas for 10 days or something, then then you start to think, oh, like that's actually that's a good lunch somewhere. Yeah, like I could go
yeah.
somewhere really fancy one day if I just put in that extra hour or two to set this up, get everything working just right. And so that's where I think it's more that it's slightly more extended or slightly more regular traveler, and it is that idea that it's just when you think I just want to be able to have enough data, because that's definitely one of the things I do run into traveling with Telstra is that they actually they give you like 200 megs a day or something like that.
Yeah, it's not a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, if you go over it, like there's a whole kind of there's a whole rigmarole. Again, I think the Vodafone system where it's just like it's $5 and you count yourself on the same plan that you're on at home. I'm like, that's
Yeah.
great.
That's nice. Yeah.
Telstra's like, if you go over the 200, we'll charge you another $10 and we'll give you an extra 500 megs, and that 500 megs will last 30 days and blah 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 blah.
Unless it's a Tuesday
Yes,
and you're wearing a green hat.
Never on a
and,
Tuesday.
yeah.
That's right.
The other thing I've noticed with Telstra is that if you go with just about any Telstra reseller, like another telco who uses Telstra in the background, they don't offer global roaming. And the one exemption I found was my net phone, because I wanted to leave Telstra because I thought they were too expensive, but I wanted to stick with the Telstra network.
Yeah.
And when I looked at some of the other networks, it's like they just do not have, like my son's got a SIM with Boost, which is a nice cheap deal and it uses Telstra, but there's no global roaming. It's just impossible. You cannot turn it on. So
Yeah.
I thought, well, I can't, as someone who travels for work, I can't not have global roaming. So Telstra's done this deal with most of their resellers that means global roaming is not an option, which means as a business customer, you go, oh, well, I guess I'm going to have to stick with Telstra.
Yeah. And funnily enough, that is the same with eSIM features.
That's
Aldi
what I was going to
Mobile,
ask. My
yep,
next question.
yep. Aldi Mobile, Boost Mobile, but same with Vodafone. That apparently sort of Kogan, Think, all those different resellers. None of them have access to the eSIM features. So that's definitely one of those areas that they all, they play nice with their resellers, but they like to kind of make sure that some of the best and newest and shiniest tricks up
Yeah.
their sleeve are theirs and theirs alone.
If I buy an iPhone from Telstra on a plan and it's got an eSIM, but the phone is locked to Telstra, is that going to stop me putting in a physical SIM from another telco?
No. So that's the really kind of cool bit. Even at a local level, you could decide. I mean, I'm not sure why you would once you're paying for a plan, but you could totally stick in another SIM card. And I think that's probably one of those things that I might do is have that depending on where I'm going is trying to have, because you can more easily as well now order things so you can get a SIM before you get to the country you're going to.
Yeah.
A bit of that pre-planning makes it so much easier if you have this kind of a setup. I know that because there's that classic thing I find where I've landed on an aeroplane, and whatever country I'm in, I'm doing the mental calculations on when is midnight back in Australia for the overlap on when my reset
I won't
for the
use my
day
phone for
ticks
20
over.
minutes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So being able to say, you know what, I'm able to plan ahead now, have the local SIM in and ready to roll the second I get there. That'd be really great.
All right. Well, speaking of travel, let's check in with Alex in Tokyo and see what's happening in the world of laptops.
Okay, so I seem to keep taking the show on the road, and this week I'm in Tokyo at the launch of the HP Elite Dragonfly, which is their new laptop. And I should give due disclosure, it's due that I'm here as a guest of HP, as is Paul Spain from NZ Tech Podcast. Welcome to the show, Paul.
Great, thanks for having me, Alex.
So HP has a new laptop, as the listeners have no doubt gathered. Why should we be excited, if at all?
Well, it's one of those challenges, isn't it? Because we see so much iteration on technology devices, from smartphones to laptops, that the leaps don't appear to be as big as what we maybe were used to at one point in time. So it really comes down to whether you fit the particular niche that they're aiming for when a new product gets launched. And I think it's fair to say that HP, compared to, say, Apple, have probably a lot more products, a lot more, individually focused products. And I guess what stood out to me about the Dragonfly really was that there's a big focus on battery life. So they've got one model that they state has over 16 hours worth of battery life, and then a variant within the same form factor, roughly 100 grams heavier, that can give up to 24. Now I always tend to take these numbers and half them for the way I use a laptop.
Smart, yeah.
So that's probably what's interesting when you look at the weight, because if you go for the lightest variant, it's under a kilo. So you've got a quad-core Intel i7 8th gen processor inside, and you've got loads of battery life, and a very small light laptop, which I heard one of their folks sort of suggest this is good for certain sector of people coming back into the workforce. I think women in Japan was referenced, but I know there are lots of different individuals that kind of like the idea of a small light laptop. Hence the MacBook Air still being so popular and so on, right?
It's an interesting mix of kind of new and old tech though as well, because it's Wi-Fi 6, for example, which is nicely cutting edge, but it's not quite as cutting edge on the processor front as it could be, is it?
No, but this is an enterprise class machine, so it's got Intel V Pro with the 8th gen CPU. They will, by the sounds of it, in the not too distant future, have one with an Intel 10th gen core CPU, and when they first come out, they don't have that V Pro capability, so they're talking to that enterprise market. But yeah, we will see a whole variety of variations, I'm sure, over the next few months, and certainly over the next 12 months, I'm sure.
They're also doing something I think fairly interesting in the design, especially for that business-centric laptop market, which has always just tended to say you can have it in silver, you might be able to have it in black in some markets, and this is neither.
Dragonfly Blue, I think they called it.
It's a name that only a marketer could love, although I do like the actual colour.
Well, I did Google HP and Dragonfly, because up until a few well, actually we're recording this slightly ahead of the embargo, but we won't get in trouble because of when it comes out. But when I was Googling it before, there were some HP, I think they were mice actually, that were blue. They looked to be a different blue, but anyway, it's a nice colour, and I guess that also talks to this differentiation. There's so many different variations of products, whether it's colours, shapes, sizes, battery life, performance. Is it good for gaming? Is it good for mobile working and docking to a USB-C monitor? Which there were a bunch of demos around docking to USB-C monitors, including one that I think was 42 inches, which was basically two 24-inch, the same form factor as putting two 24-inch monitors together. That type of working, for me, actually, I really like. I like the idea of having a small laptop that when you're in your most common working locations, which might be office and say a home office, that you dock into a USB-C monitor. You've got all the power to charge your device. Just one cable, you plug in and away you go.
It's definitely priced for that business market though as well, isn't it?
Yeah. I think that the starting price is it's north of 2.5K Australian dollars, and I imagine they've got variants with up to a 2 terabyte SSD in them, 16 gigs of RAM, and then you'll have the variant with the so-called 24-hour battery life. So we haven't seen the prices yet, but I imagine that you'll be able to spend maybe 5K on one of these if you want it fully spec'd up, or at least well north of that starting figure.
Awesome. Thanks so much for your time.
Cheers.
So, Seamus, as an international jet setter, what kind of gear do you keep in your travel bag?
So, probably the main thing that I have actually is a toiletry bag that just has all of my cables, like one set of every cable I know I need, so that I don't have to think about it. I can just grab that, throw that in the bag, and know I am not going to be missing any important cable, and things like extra USB stick, just all the like SD card, all the little important extra bits that I know I might need one of these. I went through that.
Let me take a stab in the dark. Is it either the old red or the new blue toiletry bags that you get on Qantas when you travel business class?
No, you know what? It actually, and it is a very particular one. From about 5 years ago, Telstra, Qantas, they're all the same. Australian juggernaut that likes to charge as much as it can get away with. Qantas gave away the toiletry bags with this Florence Broadhurst tie-in. Now, I'm a bit of a design nerd, and Florence Broadhurst, famous old Australian fabric designer, and there's this one particular design that looks like a circuit board. And so it
Oh,
is
nice.
just this perfect bag for having a bunch of cables thrown in it. I actually now have about 4 spare ones because my wife just keeps kind of spotting, like she might see one down at the, Vinnie's or somewhere that someone's thrown off. And she's just like, oh, sweet, we'll have a spare one of those.
So apart from all the
Yeah.
dongles, thank you very much, Apple. What else do you need? What have you got in your carry bag?
So I always take a power board, because I find that's so much easier
Yeah.
than trying to have, 10 different like adapters for every device. I just have the one adapter. I plug in an extension cable and have a power board there with me. But the other one for desk level sort of power when I'm often, you're in a press room if you're overseas for something. I've got this awesome Belkin universal adapter. And so it has like 2 Australian plugs on the main kind of board that you carry with you. And then it has 2 like 2 amp, like, so not kind of the low, there's so many of those supposed travel power boards that only have 1 amp USB power, and it's
Yeah,
just,
and by the time your phone's charged, you
oh
could
my
have walked home
God.
back to Australia and
So, I
charged
mean,
it.
that's,
Yeah.
the biggest tip I always tell people, just read if it's 1A or 2.1A or whatever, like that is going to make a
Yeah.
world of difference, particularly when you're on the road. You don't want to be waiting forever. So yes, anyway, the
Yeah.
Belkin, it's called the Universal Travel Power Double Adapter. I mean, I love, yeah.
Because they know how to name a
Yep, it's
product. Yeah.
literally, it is what it says on the tin. But it's great. And
Yeah.
then it has like, every other international adapter that you just kind of switch over onto the end of it. But super handy for just, like I say, when you're stuck at a desk for, I think people think that jet setting lifestyle I mean, okay, yeah. On Instagram, you try to make it look like you've been partying hard. And then most of the time is actually spent staring at your laptop as if you were at home, sitting in a boring press room covering the event.
Yes. So what about this talk of 24-hour battery life on a notebook? Is that what kind of battery life are you getting, and do you really need something that's going to go all day?
So yeah, it's a good trade-off kind of question because if I'm really on the road, that I'm wondering if the battery has been designed in a way that means like they've magically increased the density of the batteries without increasing the weight, because that my concern often, on the road is how much weight is that going to actually put on my back. um
Yeah.
and so, like I mostly still use a MacBook Air as my main travel thing, because my big trick is when I'm on the road is actually to kind of turn the screen brightness way down. It usually seems to be a really good power saving. And also I've stopped using Chrome as my main browser because it really does seem like a huge power hog these days.
It's a bit of a
Yeah,
pig,
and
yeah.
so I've tried to opt to other more power friendly browser options. But it's those tweaks to try to eke out a bit by software and reduced screen brightness. But seriously, yeah, I mean, I think particularly on the kinds of, like, yeah, there's plenty of events where you just might not get a chance to sit down near a power outlet if it's not well organized. And I'd absolutely be attracted to something if it's genuinely giving us that sort of that idea that you'll get 24 hours of battery life, and suddenly you go, oh, I might only need to charge my laptop once every 3 days. Yeah, that could be a really interesting idea. It just leapt to my mind that actually, because my kids with their school laptops now, I'm like, because they always forget to charge it for the next day. They come back the second day and go, "Oh, yeah, I forgot to charge my laptop yesterday, so I ran out of juice right when I needed it." Like, that's your fault. You got to suck it up. But if they only had to charge it twice a week, that'd be something.
But they'd forget. If they've got to do it
If they
every
don't
night,
have
they're
to-
more likely
You're
to
right. The
remember.
habit would break,
Yeah.
and they would always forget. Okay, yep, forget it.
Well, folks, that just about wraps it up for another fine episode of Vertical Hold. What do you think? Do we need an all day battery life? Is it worth getting about eSims? What do you keep in your travel bag? Send us your feedback via Twitter or on the Vertical Hold Facebook page. Thanks to Paul for joining us in Japan, and also thanks to Seamus for joining us here in the Vertical Hold studios.
Thank you for having me, and subscribe to my newsletter at Byteside.
We'd love to get a good plug in there. Also, speaking of plugs, Thanks to everyone who's tuning in on your podcasting platform of choice. We love it when you give us a plug, give us a shout out, leave us a review, give us your thoughts on the show, and help us spread the good word. Vertical Hold is proudly sponsored by Casa Systems, taking Australian technology to the global market. So yeah, like I said, I'm off to Japan soon, and last time I was there, we had a typhoon and earthquake, and all I needed was Godzilla coming out of the bay, and I would have had Tokyo trifecta.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, bring it on.